Let the best guys with the best talent, the best content, let them go for it. If they do the damn thing and they get the views and make the money and have the content, let them win.
What's to say that your book is not just a ripoff of other books? And they mentioned Roger Currie.
No one.
Because I'm not Alan Roger Currie. I'm me. Alan Roger Currie will be mentioned in the book. He'll get proper attribution, unlike Alpha Male Strategies, who did do a straight up plagiarization of his work. He did. I know because I read the book.
Yeah.
Not only did I read the book, but I also have a literary assistant who did a literary review before I read the book. And I did that on purpose because I wanted my assistant to be completely objective in doing their work. And they even pointed out that the man straight ripped Alan Roger Currie. So for anybody out there that has concerns along these lines, you need to take it to Alpha Male Strategies, not me.
Right.
My book is different from all the other Black love, books, relationships and all the rest of it. I've studied them all. Steve Harvey, Hill Harper, Derek Jackson, Alpha Male Strategies, Alan Roger Currie is included. I've studied them all. And some of them are good. A lot of them are really bad. And I'm going to offer something that none of them talks about. I know Black people, so that's what I write about.
No one.
Happy Thursday to you. I'm back. Yeah, with another video podcast, which again, I'm going to set some records for the last month of video podcasts, specifically YouTube-oriented video podcasts. I know I've set some kind of personal record for me. Because again, starting when I first got on YouTube in April 2017, my overall average is about 8 to 10 videos a month. 8 to 10 videos a month is my average. Starting with April 2017. That's kind of been my rough average, is about 8 to 10 videos a month, which would be an average of about 2 videos a week, maybe a couple more. But, so number one, I said in my last video, I'm not going to go in on your boy Feliciano for the rest of the month. And I'm only going to briefly mention him in this video, but it's only as it relates to his similarities with my other, for lack of a better term, arch nemesis on YouTube, Mamiya Obsidian Ali. I was listening to him today. And I know some of y'all gonna be like, why, Alan? Why? Why would you submit yourself to listening to that dude? Why? Why were you even listening to him? Yeah, I confess guilt. I was listening to him because initially he wasn't even going to be mentioned in today's video. I wasn't even going to mention him or AMS. But I'm going to start off talking about him and then get to what I really want to talk about. The main thing I'm going to be talking about, and I knew this was going to happen, in my video on Tuesday, 2 days ago, for the upteen time, I mentioned this a few times, probably at least a half a dozen times in previous videos, where I made the comment that you cannot change or raise a woman's interest in you when it comes to strictly short-term non-monogamous casual sex. Short-term non-monogamous casual sex. And I had some guys, I don't know, probably 6, 7, maybe as many as 8 different guys that wrote me to one degree or another challenging me on that. And a couple tried to say that I'm contradicting myself. Because like one guy said, Alan, I thought that was the whole point of seduction, is to raise a woman's interest in having casual sex with you over a short period of time. So that's going to be the main meat of this video. But first, I just gotta touch on your boy. Gotta touch on your boy. See, here's the thing. In many ways, Muhammad City and Ali and AMS are two totally different guys. I would say their personalities in many ways are totally different from each other. But at the same time, they do have a lot of similarities. Believe it or not, those two actually, in certain areas, have similarities. I give you 2 or 3 similarities, particularly as it relates to me. Number one, those are the 2 guys I've had the longest standing feuds with. Whether you want to call it feud or beef or whatever. That's the 2 guys I've had the longest standing beef with since I came on YouTube. Starting with April 2017, since I came on YouTube, there's no 2 guys I've had longer standing beef or a longer standing feud with than AMS and Muhammad City and Ali. Again, I first crossed paths with AMS. It was in the comment section of one of my videos in like late August or early September of 2017. That's when I first crossed paths with AMS. Was in the comment section of one of my videos in either late August or early September of 2017. Muhammad City and Ali, I first crossed paths with him around the same time of year. It was late August, early September of 2015. Yeah, it was around late August, early September of 2015. So about 2 years earlier. About 2 years earlier. And I already did a video where I gave my entire backstory. I don't want to rehash the whole backstory. You can go back and watch that video I did where I kind of took time to rehash the whole backstory. But in a nutshell, we used to be cool. Me and Obsidian actually used to be cool for about roughly a year and a half. From like roughly November of 2015 up until about April, May of 2017, we actually used to be cool. We actually used to be cool. And then we had a major falling out in the first week of June of 2017. And for the most part, we've never been cool since. There's times when we've been cordial towards each other and respectful towards each other. So there have been times since then that we've been on panels together and we've been cordial and respectful. But as far as cool, we've never been cool again, ever. Since we fell out in June of 2017, we've never been cool again. But here's the thing. If you've been keeping up with our history, specifically in 2020, the last time I mentioned him was when I mentioned him and Bernard Riley, whose channel, matter of fact, on the side note, Bernard Riley cammed up today. That's the first time I seen him cam up. Yeah, he did a live stream on his webcam. He showed his face and everything. One of the reasons why Muhammad City and Ali and Bernard Riley fell out was because me and the black YouTuber that goes by the pseudonym Angry Man start roasting him for being a major flip-flopper. See, if you remember, what one of the things that started my whole series of criticizing AMS was because, among other things, he was engaging in revisionist history when he was interviewed by Kevin Samuels on Kevin Samuels' YouTube show. And again, that's one of my major pet peeves, man. I don't like people who engage in revisionist history. Again, for those who still, I think most of y'all know what that means by now because I've mentioned it a few times, but for that 1% that don't know what that means, revisionist history is when you try to act like things, like you either do one or two things. You either try to change the details of your past activities and past events, or even more so, you try to act like certain past activities and events from your past never existed. That's revisionist history. So like, for example, if I used to, I'll give you a perfect example. As you know, when I was between the age of roughly 17 and 37, I used to have sex with a lot of married women, women who were engaged to be married, and women who had long-term boyfriends. I acknowledged that in chapter 9 of my book, The Possibility of Sex. That was probably the first time I acknowledged it publicly, was in chapter 9 of my book, The Possibility of Sex. And then when I got on YouTube, within the first month or two after I first got on YouTube, I acknowledged it on some of my videos. If I was engaged in revisionist history, an example of me engaging in revisionist history would be for me to try to act like I never did that. Like, say somebody was to bring it up and say, hey, Alan, I heard you used to have sex with married women and women who were engaged to be married. Is that true? And I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. You got any proof? You got any video proof? If you don't have any video proof, then I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. See, that would be me engaging in revisionist history. Is if I try to act like that portion of my life and those activities that I engaged in never happened. And that's one similarity between AMS and Muhammad City and Ali. Both of them in the year 2020, to one degree or another, have tried to engage in revisionist history. Another similarity between them, both of them started off criticizing dating coaches, and now they market themselves as a dating. Well, actually, AMS, from what I hear, he doesn't market himself as a dating coach anymore. Now he markets himself as a self-improvement coach. A self-improvement coach / life coach. That's what I heard. Yeah, I heard now he markets himself as a self-improvement coach / life coach instead of a dating coach. But initially, starting with roughly January of 2017, he used to market himself as a dating coach, even though before that, he used to harshly criticize dating coaches. Muhammad City and Ali did the same thing. Muhammad City and Ali, starting with summer of 2017, all the way up until, I want to say, last spring, last summer, he used to criticize dating coaches, including myself. There's at least 2 or 3 times he criticized me. I remember specifically one time in 2017, he said Alan Roger Currie should never refer to himself as a dating coach. He should never refer to himself as a dating coach. He said, because in my opinion, in order to qualify as a dating coach, you have to be able to guarantee your male clients that you're going to help them pull women that are out of their league, that are out of their. That's what he said in summer 2017. He said no man should call himself a dating coach unless they are giving their male clients advice that's going to help them pull women that are considered out of their league. And that's when I did a response video called I Am Not a Miracle Worker and I Am Not a Matchmaker. Yep, that was my response to him saying that. I did a video back in 2017 called I'm Not a Miracle Worker and I'm Not a Matchmaker. No, that's not part of being a dating coach. I don't have to guarantee my male clients that I'm going to help them pull women out of their league. I said multiple times. And 2 things I don't guarantee any of my male clients. I never guarantee a male client of mine that as a result of reading my books or listening to my audiobooks or doing a consultation session with me or a one-on-one face-to-face coaching session with me, that they're going to automatically improve the quality of their sex partners and or the quantity of their sex partners. I never guarantee that. Now, I let them know that it's possible. It's possible because I've had clients that have done one of those 2 things, if not both. So it is possible. It's possible for a client of mine, as a direct result of my advice, to either improve the quality of their sex partners and or the quantity of their sex partners, because I've had a number of clients who have experienced that. So it is possible, but I don't guarantee that. I never, ever, 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 ever guarantee that. The only people who are in business to pretty much guarantee that would be a matchmaker. That's what matchmakers are for. If you know anything about professional matchmakers, that's what you actually pay matchmakers for. Matchmakers, part of their job is to hook you up with a member of the opposite sex that's of the exact quality and caliber that you're looking for. And if they fail to do that, they either have to give you a full refund or at least a partial refund. They either have to refund you all your money or at least like 80 to 90% of your money if they fail to do that. So that's part of what goes under the category of a matchmaker. Yeah, that's what a matchmaker is for, is to connect you with a member of the opposite sex who meets the exact criteria that you're looking for. That's of the exact caliber and quality that you're looking for. That's a matchmaker. I'm not a matchmaker. I'm a dating coach. Dating coach don't offer any type of guarantees like that. So anyway, going back to my point, yeah, that's one thing. That's one of the similarities that him and AMS had. They both started out criticizing dating coaches, and then, because now Mumia Obsidian Ali markets himself as a date. His tagline is he's the dating coach for the non-select heterosexual man. That's what he's a. Shout out to my fellow dating advisor, Ron Wills. I always like to give people their proper credit attribution. Ron Wills is the one who popularized the terms select versus non-select. That's Ron Wills. I don't know if he originated those terms, but he definitely popularized those terms. Yeah, he was the one who popularized select versus non-select. And now Obsidian uses that all the time. He uses those two terms all the time, and he doesn't always give a shout out to Ron Wills. You would almost think he originated those terms the way he uses those terms, select and non-select. But yeah, that's his tagline. He says he's the dating coach for the non-select guy. Which to me, I'm just be blunt, that's stupid. That's like me calling myself a health and fitness personal trainer for the significantly overweight guy. Seriously, that would be like me calling myself, if I was a personal trainer, me calling myself the health and fitness personal trainer for the significantly overweight and out of shape guy. Duh. Anyway, I'm going to try not to ramble and digress too much. Here's my specific issue in regards to what I heard him say today. He said at least 2 to 3 things that just really irritated me. Really irritated me. He was on the subject, his general subject he was talking about today was 2 things. On the male end, he's talking about men being cheap. He was saying, he was harshly criticizing men for being cheap and not wanting to spend money on women. And his argument was, all quality pussy, you got to pay for any quality pussy. That was one of his arguments. He said, anytime you want to sleep with a woman that's quality, that's like a 7, 8, 9, or 10 in terms of looks and sex appeal, and that's not, skanky or highly promiscuous, then you're going to have to put out some money. That's not true. That's actually not true. That's not true. I know for a fact that's not true. I know for a fact that that's not true. And I'm not going to go into a long, lengthy reasons why, but I just know from my own experiences, that's not true. That is not true. I've slept with a lot of 7, 8s, 9s, and 10s without spending any money on them. I'm talking about, in many cases, I didn't spend even like $5 on them. I didn't spend even $5 on them. When I was in my 20s and 30s, and even to a lesser extent, my 40s, I've never, even my 50s actually, now I'm thinking about it, I give you an example. In my 50s was when I was at the 21 convention in 2017. I slept with a woman that was 32 years younger than me. that was 32 years younger than me. I didn't spend no money on her. Man, the vast majority of women I've had casual sex with, I either did one or two things. I either didn't spend any money on them, or I might have spent like, somewhere between $5 to $20, $5 to $20 at most, if I did spend some money. But most of the women I've slept with in my life, I didn't spend any money on them for casual sex. Now, I've always spent money on women who were like my girlfriends, long-term companions. But if you're talking about women that I just strictly had casual sex with, I'd say 80 to 90% of women I've had casual sex with, I didn't spend any money on them. And most of them have been 7 and above. Most of the women I've had casual sex with have been 7 and above. So anyway, I disagree with that. So that was where he was criticizing men. He said, if you expect to have sex with a woman that's a 7, 8, 9, 10, you're going to have to spend money on her. Actually, again, going back to my assertion that him and AMS are similar, AMS said that on a video one time. He said He said, if you're dealing with a woman who's an 8, 9, or 10, he said, you got to take them out to dinner. You got to spend money on them. You got to flatter them. You got to spend time with them non-sexually before you fuck them. That's what AMS said on the video. But yeah, Obsidian was saying that today. He was criticizing men. He said, a lot of you men are cheap. And he said, if you cheat, you're only going to get low quality pussy. That's what he basically said. He said, if you cheat, the only pussy you're going to get is low quality pussy. That is not true. I'm here to tell you. That is not true. Then on the female side, he criticized the women basically for giving up the pussy to guys who didn't spend any money on, which when you think about it is a contradiction. Which when you think about it, that's a contradiction. On one end, he's telling guys, you can't get pussy from a woman who's a 7, 8, 9, and 10 unless you spend some degree of money on her. But then he turned around and was criticizing women who are 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s for giving up the pussy to men without those men spending money on them. So which is it? See how people be contradicting themselves? He basically contradicted himself. Because if no women who were 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s were giving up any pussy without men spending money on them, then why would he be criticizing them? Yeah, because that was his criticism for women. He said, he basically, I'm paraphrasing his words, but essentially he said, I'm tired of women who are 7, 8, 9s, and 10s giving up pussy to men for free without them spending money on them. He basically was like, that should never happen. So that was full of shit. Again, I know for a fact I've had sex, and specifically casual sex, with many, I'm talking about hundreds of women, starting with high school all the way up to now, before I got engaged and got married. I had sex with hundreds of women that I would categorize in terms of the combination of rating their beauty and sex appeal as women who were either 7s, 8s, 9s, or 10s. I've had sex with hundreds of women that I never took them out on any dates. I never wined and dined them. All I did was talk dirty to them, get their pussy wet, and then I fucked them. Period. That's why my nickname, starting with college, was The Legend. D-A Legend. The Legend. Yeah, man, I don't be spending no money on women for casual sex. No, that's not to say I've never tricked. I have tricked before. I've confessed that a few times. Mainly with women that when I was out of the country. That's the number one time I've tricked. Is when women who couldn't either understand American English or speak American English. So there has been a few times that I've tricked. Yeah, like when I was in Amsterdam, I did some tricking in the red light district with some women who didn't speak English at all. But generally, If you're talking about women who speak American English, I don't spend money on women, man. I don't spend money on women, man. I don't believe in spending money on women for casual sex. And I'm gonna touch on that more towards the latter half. But anyway, I don't want to be too long with this. Here was the thing he said that really just, other than those disagreements I just pointed out, that really got on my nerve. He started talking about, after he was issuing all these criticisms, he said, where else are you going to get this type of truth? Where else are you going to get this type of truth? He said, a lot of guys ask me, Obsidian, what separates you from other black male dating coaches for men? What separates you from other black male dating coaches for men? He said, this made me laugh. It literally, I would say more than irritated me. It did both. It made me laugh because it was so ridiculous, but it did irritate me too. He said, the number one thing that separates me is that I'm more about truth. Yeah, he actually said that. He said, I'm more about truth than just about any black male dating coach out there. He said, I'm all about truth. He said, when it comes to men, he said, I force men. What did he say? He said something about, I encourage men to never lie to themselves and be delusional. That's what he said. He said, when I work with men, I encourage men to never lie to themselves and to stop being delusional. And he said, I do the same thing with women. He said, I don't really work with women, but when I talk, anytime I've had the opportunity to talk to women, I do the same thing. My big thing is I force women to see the truth about themselves and prevent themselves from being delusional. Insert dog face here. I couldn't believe he said that. I couldn't believe he said that. He literally said, and again, I slightly paraphrase his words, but for the most part, that's what he said. He said, compared to other black male dating coaches for men, he said, I am probably the number one black male dating coach who centers on truth, being truthful with my male clients and encouraging them to acknowledge the truth about themselves, to not lie to themselves, and not be delusional. See, if you're not a long-term follower of mine, and you're not a long-term follower of his, and you don't know about the history of our beef, see, when we fell out in June of 2017, that was one of my number one criticisms of a lot of black men here on YouTube. That's always been, even before I got to YouTube, that's always been one of my number one criticisms of men and a lot of single heterosexual men in society. One of the things I've always told men is that you can't really be upfront and straightforwardly honest with women until you're upfront and straightforwardly honest with yourself. That's always been one of my personal philosophies and pieces of advice to men, starting with the late 1990s. I was probably, arguably, the first dating coach who came out with a book. When I came out with my first version of Mo 1, which was in May of 1999, I was arguably the first person to come out with a book that forced men to examine the flaws and weaknesses in their own behavior. Specifically, I force men to acknowledge if they're one of these three things. One of the things my book, Mo 1, does is force men to acknowledge if they're a liar, if they're a disingenuous and misleading manipulator, or if they're just generally a verbal coward. That's the three things that my book, Mo 1, forces men to do, is examine themselves so that they can openly acknowledge if they have a history and bad habit of being a liar with women, a disingenuous and misleading manipulator with women, or just generally being a verbal coward with women. If I had to add on one more thing, a misogynist, a bitter, resentful misogynist, or borderline misogynist. Yeah, that would be the fourth thing I would add on. Is that relates to my chapter on Mode 4. Is acknowledge if you've had been in the bad habit of being either a bitter, resentful misogynist or at minimum a borderline misogynist. Matter of fact, I just had an interview with Tony Bruno, which is the younger brother of George Bruno, who's associated with 21 Studios. And now, if you remember, George Bruno actually did a video in 2018 where he called Mo 1 the best dating advice book he's ever read for men. Yep, he gave me a heavy endorsement. He called in November of 2018, he did a video on his YouTube channel where he called Mo 1 the absolute best dating advice book for men ever written, that he's ever read. Yeah, he said that, George Bruno. And one of the reasons why he said he loved the book so much is because of what I just said. He said, Alan, your book is probably one of the first books that I read that forced men to look at themselves in the mirror and acknowledge the flaws and weaknesses in their moral character and their integrity. And basically to acknowledge when the instances when they've been a liar, a disingenuous and misleading manipulator, a verbal coward, or a bitter, resentful, antagonistic misogynist. He said your book was one of the first books, if not the first book I've ever read that almost all your chapters forced men to do that. And now you got Obsidian talking about, trying to basically imply that he's the first coach that makes men self-examine themselves and identify the flaws and weaknesses in their behavior and their character so that they won't exhibit. Here's what's interesting about him using the word delusional. I did a video in fall of 2017 about men who are delusional about their ability to pull 7, 8, 9s, and 10. Remember I recently said, I did a video where I said a strong statement. I said there's a percentage of men in society that are never, ever going to hook up with a woman who's a 7, 8, 9, or 10. Matter of fact, C Boogie did a video in response to me making that strong statement. Yeah. Well, the first time I made that strong statement was in summer of 2017. Yeah, I told a lot of men on YouTube, I said a lot of you men on YouTube are delusional. I basically said, some of you men, y'all ain't gonna never pull no woman that's no 7, 8, 9, or 10, with the exception of if you tricking or you offering to be a woman's sugar daddy. I said, with the exception of if you tricking or offering to be a woman's sugar daddy, you ain't gonna never share the bed of a woman who's a 7, 8, 9, or 10. Guess who gave me the most pushback on that video at the time? Guess who gave me the most pushback on that video at the time? Mumia Obsidian Ali. Mumia Obsidian Ali gave me the most pushback on that video when I first uploaded it. And now I hear him today basically making the same argument. He said, one of the problems I have with a lot of men is that they're delusional. Because his argument was, again, one of his main arguments in his podcast today was, if you're a man that thinks you're going to be able to pull a 7, 8, 9, or 10 without spending money on them, without basically whining and dining them, he was basically like, you're delusional. That was his argument. He said, you're delusional. If you think you're going to pull a 7, 8, 9, or 10 without taking out on dates and just generally spending some money on them, what's known as whining and dining. Whining and dining is basically the legal variation of tricking. It's the legal variation of tricking. They call that whining and dining. For example, if you take a woman out on 2 dates, 3 dates, 4 dates, and as a result of you taking out on those dates, she decides she wants to give you some pussy, that would mean you wined and dined a woman in exchange for her sexual companionship. You wined and dined her. You treated her to free meals. That's called, I did a video about that, whining and dining versus tricking. But that's what he was making. But yeah, he said, that's one of the things that separates me from bro, anything you trying to do as a dating coach, I've already done. Believe that. And that applies to 95% of dating coaches out here. Matter of fact, somebody gave me a compliment on 21 Studios YouTube channel. They posted the video, the interview I did with Tony Bruno. And in the comment section, somebody wrote, Alan Roger Currie is the father and major, is the father and number one influence for like 95% of the dating coaches in the manosphere. And you ain't gonna get no disagreement from me. You ain't gonna get no disagreement from me. I told y'all before, man, I was probably the first black male dating coach in the world that was doing the combination of these three things, that was doing a combination that, number one, had a book, and on top of having a book, was doing a combination of email consultations, Skype and telephone consultations, and one-on-one face-to-face coaching sessions. There wasn't nobody before me doing that, black. It might have been one or two white guys who might have done that before me, but black dudes, there wasn't no black dudes doing that before me. I don't know of any black guys who were doing that before me. That was both giving guys advice, number one, had a book, at least one ebook or paperback, and then on top of that was doing email consultations, Skype and telephone consultations, and one-on-one face-to-face coaching sessions. Wasn't nobody doing that before me, man. Nobody. There's nobody in the manosphere who was doing that before me. But yeah, man, that blew my mind. What else? He said at least one more thing that tripped me out. Yeah, one was that he said he said he was the only black male dating coach that puts a high premium on truth. That's bullshit. All of my books are about truth. All of my books are about truth. Number two, he said he's the only black male dating coach that gives men advice and that admonishes men if they're exhibiting behavior that's unrealistic and or delusional. That's not true. That's not true. I was the first one in that area. Oh, and there was a third thing. And this kind of relates to my feud with AMS and a few other people. Later on, he started talking about people accusing people of stealing their material. And I know he was referring to me. He didn't say my name, but I'm pretty sure that 99% chance he was referring to me. He said, yeah, you got a lot of dating coaches who will try to accuse other dating coaches of stealing their material. He said, that's only a black thing. That's a black manosphere thing. He said, if you study the white manosphere, he said, you notice they don't do that. They freely allow other people to repeat and regurgitate their talking points because they know that's going to help them sell more of their books and products and services. He said, so white guys, they don't have a problem with that. That's not true. I know for a fact that's not true. That's bullshit. Matter of fact, just within the last 2 to 3 weeks, I had an exchange with Anthony Johnson, who's the organizer of the 21 convention. And I was talking about, my beef with AMS. And he mentioned that at one of his events in the last year or so, no, I think it was 2 years ago, he said he had an event that I wasn't a part of where Robert Glover, if you're familiar with him, he wrote a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. He said a guy named Dr. Robert Glover got into it with this guy who I met in Germany named Liam McCrae. Liam McCrae works with James Marshall, who I've mentioned a few times on previous videos. He's from Australia. But anyway, without getting a long story, yeah, Anthony said they got into it about, I think Dr. Glover accused Liam of lifting his talking points. But I know for a fact, man, there's white PUAs and white dating coaches who've gotten angry when they felt like other people were lifting their material without giving them credit. They don't just freely let people steal. No, let me tell you this right now. No person who's an established book author is going to just openly let people plagiarize their material. Period. If you're an established book author and you have copywritten material or trademark material, copyright material or even though trademark, that has more to do with logos and slogans than actual literary material. So that's the difference. Trademark, that has to do with logos and marketing slogans rather than actual lengthy material. That more so falls under copyright. But no established author is just going to let... See, like, I give you one example. Like, I know a lot of guys who repeat a lot of Rollo Tomasi's talking points from his books, but the difference is they always give him proper credit attribution. They don't repeat his talking points and don't mention his name. There's probably half a dozen guys in the manosphere who'll be repeating a lot of Rollo's talking points from his books, but they always give him proper credit attribution. See, I don't have a problem with people repeating some of my talking points if they're mentioning my name. Like, one person I've always given credit to in that category would be C Boogie. I remember C Boogie, particularly between the latter half of 2018 and the first half of 2019, C Boogie used to repeat a lot of my talking points, but he would always mention my name. He would always tell people to check out my YouTube channel. He would tell people to buy my books. He would always give me my proper credit attribution. And so I didn't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem, 95% of the time, I never have a problem with people borrowing my talking points from my books if they're giving me credit, if they're telling people to buy my books. But if you repeat and regurgitate my talking points, but you ain't mentioning my name and you're not encouraging people to buy my books, no, I ain't gonna be cool with that shit. But going back to Obsidian, that's not a black thing. He tried to say that's strictly a black thing. No, it's not. That is not true. That is not true. That is not strictly a black. That's an author thing. That's an author thing is what it is. It ain't a black thing. That's an author thing. No author wants other people repeating and regurgitating or plagiarizing material from their books without giving them proper credit attribution. Period. Now, I went longer on that issue than I wanted to, but I just had to vent and get that out. Okay, I had a lot of guys, well, not a lot. I'd say about maybe 7 or 8 guys wrote me after Tuesday's video and said, Alan, I'm starting to get confused, man. You kind of confusing me. Because I thought the whole point of learning verbal seduction skills and erotic dirty talk skills was so you can raise a woman's interest in having casual sex with you very quickly in like a real short period of time. Like, for example, in the same day or at least in the same week. But then I was watching your video on Tuesday and you made the statement that it is virtually impossible to raise a woman's interest in having casual sex with you. So I'm like confused. Isn't that somewhat of a contradiction? And then I had a couple of guys that just flat out disagreed with it. They was like, Alan, I disagree with you. It is possible to raise a woman's interest in having casual sex with you by, like AMS said, by showing her the various aspects of your personality, like your sense of humor, your intelligence, and all the other, appealing aspects of your personality. When you do that, you can increase a woman. No, you can't. No, you can't. I'm telling you. And again, this is not just solely my own opinion. Studies have come out backing me on what I said. There's been a few. I don't know any I can highlight by name right off the top of my head. But I remember just a few years ago, there was a study that came out where they surveyed women about their interest in casual sex. And all the women said that they know at no later than the 10-minute mark of their very first conversation with a man whether or not they're going to engage in short-term non-monogamous casual sex with that man. Some women said they know as quickly as the first 30 to 60 seconds of their very first conversation with a man. And other women, the latest was about roughly 10 minutes. Women said they know at roughly no later than the 10-minute mark of their very first conversation if they're going to engage in casual sex with a man. Now, relationship sex, that's different. Many women have acknowledged that it might take them days, weeks, months, sometimes even years to determine if they're going to engage in sex with a man within the context of marriage or within the context of a long-term, emotionally profound, strictly monogamous romantic relationship. So when it comes to, if you're talking about relationship sex, yeah, most women, it takes them a while to make a final decision on that. So that's when men do have the potential to do things that will raise or increase that woman's interest in them. But when it comes to strictly casual sex, you can't raise a woman's interest. You can't raise a woman's interest. Now, I had one guy come in my comment section. I already responded to him, but I'll repeat what he said. There was one guy in my comment section. He said, Alan, I saw a video where this woman rejected this guy, but then 10 minutes later, he showed up with big wads of cash and driving like an expensive sports car, like a Lamborghini, and all of a sudden that woman changed her mind and said she was willing to sleep with him. That's not raising a woman's interest. That's not raising a woman's interest. What that's called is tricking. Plain and simple, that's called tricking. That's called tricking. Tricking is not the same thing as raising a woman's interest. Matter of fact, speaking of the 21 convention, if anybody attended the 2018 21 convention, I talked about that in detail at the 21 convention. That's one of the things, that was part of my presentation. I was talking about the difference between genuine sexual interest, and versus opportunistic and or manipulative sexual interest. Those are two different things. And I pointed out on previous videos before. There's a difference between genuine sexual interest and manipulative / opportunistic sexual interest. See, that's basically what prostitution is. When you have sex with a prostitute or a professional call girl or an erotic escort, she's not having sex with you because she's genuinely interested in having sex with you. She's not having sex with you because she genuinely finds you physically attractive and sexually appealing. She's having sex with you because you're offering to give her cash money in exchange for her sexual companionship. That's not genuine sexual interest. And the same thing applies to that guy that my commenter mentioned. First, got rejected by a woman, but then later he showed up with a big wad of cash in his hand in a Lamborghini or some other type of expensive sports car. That's not raising a woman's interest. What you're doing there is taking advantage of women's manipulative and opportunistic tendencies, is what you're doing in that regard. That's not the same thing as raising a woman's genuine interest in you. What you're doing is you're taking advantage of women's materialistic and opportunistic tendencies, their manipulative nature, which is what The Possibility of Sex was about. That's one of the things my book, The Possibility of Sex, is about, is highlighting women's manipulative and materialistic nature. Just like Ooh Say It Again is my book that highlights women's sexually duplicitous nature. Women's sexually duplicitous nature. And The Possibility of Sex is my book that highlights women's manipulative and materialistic nature. So bottom line, man, no, tricking is not representative of raising a woman's interest. Same with whining and dining. Whining and dining is not the same as genuinely raising a woman's interest in you. When you whine and dine a woman in an attempt to get her in bed, what you're doing is you're trying to take advantage of her opportunistic and materialistic tendencies. That's what you're doing. That's all you're doing. You're not raising her interest. You're just taking advantage of a woman who's materialistic and or opportunistic. That's what you're doing. So no, you cannot raise a woman. I did my own informal survey. If you remember, I mentioned this a few times before. When I was in Los Angeles in early November of 2018, I had conversations and informal surveys with approximately 15 women and asked them a wide variety of questions to do a direct verbal game versus indirect verbal game, my 4 modes of behavior, alpha males versus beta males, and a lot of other related topics. And that was one of the questions I asked them was about how quickly do they know if they want to have casual sex with. All the women I talked to said it ranged the same thing that study said. It ranged anywhere from as quickly as like the first minute to no later than 10 minutes. Well, I think one woman did say as long as 15 minutes. There was at least one woman who said, yeah, she said, I know at no later than the 15-minute mark if I'm engaged in like a one-night stand or a weekend fling with a guy. Here's where it's not a contradiction to seduction. It's not a contradiction to seduction. Seduction, and I talked about this on a recent video. See, seduction, without getting too lengthy and too detailed, is about doing this. Is when a woman is already acknowledges that she finds you physically attractive and sexually appealing, but she's interested in a different type of sex than you are. That's where seduction comes into play. Seduction doesn't really come into play if a woman lets it be known that she's just flat out not attracted to you, not interested in having sex with you at all. Like that, which would essentially be a rejecter. I don't attempt to seduce rejectors. I make that clear, and I'll say it again. I don't try to seduce rejectors. I seduce women who are wholesome pretenders, sexually duplicitous women that I refer to as wholesome pretenders, and similarly, sexually duplicitous women that I refer to as erotic hypocrites, which is basically a more pretentious, materialistic, and antagonistic variation of a wholesome pretender, an erotic hypocrite. Those are 2 women that I seduce. Seducing comes into play when you meet a woman that on the positive end, she finds you physically attractive, sexually appealing, but she's interested in long-term sex when you might be interested in short-term sex. Or she's interested in strictly monogamous sex and you're interested in non-monogamous or polyamorous sex. And what you do is you use your verbal seduction skills and erotic dirty talk skills to persuade her to engage in the type of sex that you want to engage in, instead of you lying to her and pretending like you want to engage in the type of sex that she wants to engage in. So I'm running out of time because I want to keep this under an hour. But here's in a nutshell the only way you're going to get a woman to have casual sex with you. There's only a few ways you're going to get a woman to have casual sex with you. Number 1, attraction. That's number 1. That's probably the simplest and easiest way, would be attraction. Attraction is when you meet a woman and she just considers you so physically attractive and so sexually appealing that she just immediately makes it known that she wants to have sex with you, and specifically casual sex. That's what I would call a reciprocator. A reciprocator. Number 2, seduction. Again, that's when you meet a woman that has made it known that she finds you physically attractive and sexually appealing, but she's interested in a different type of sex than you are. For example, she's interested in long-term, strictly monogamous sex, and you're interested in short-term, non-monogamous sex, and you have to persuade her to engage in the type of sex that you want to engage in, instead of you try to pretend like you're interested in the type of sex that she's interested in. Then the third way is simply dishonesty and manipulation. Dishonesty and manipulation. That's when you're willing to lie to a woman. You're willing to lie to a woman and give her the misleading impression that you're interested in the same type of sex that she wants to have. So, for example, you know you want short-term sex, but you give her the misleading impression that you're interested in long-term sex. You're interested in non-monogamous sex, but you give her the misleading impression that you're interested in strictly monogamous sex. That's dishonesty and manipulation. And fourth is financial negotiation, tricking, whining and dining, becoming a woman's sugar daddy. Yeah, that's the fourth method of getting a woman to have casual sex with you, is financial negotiation. And then fifth, the most despicable of the five, is coercion. That would involve sexual assault, date rape, which is what I covered in my last two videos. Yeah, when you engage in like some kind of physically aggressive and physically forceful sexual assault or date rape, groping women, etc. Coercion. Those are the five major ways that get a woman to have casual sex with you: attraction, seduction, dishonesty and manipulation, financial negotiation, and coercion. Other than that, there ain't no other way to get a woman to have sex with you, and particularly casual sex with you. There's no other way. So, if you're not a master of persuasion and seduction like me, the king of verbal seduction and kinky erotic dirty talk, then you're either going to have to resort to tricking, which is exchanging cash money for a woman's sexual companionship, or you're going to have to resort to tricking, not tricking, but tricking a woman with dishonesty and manipulation. Get it? Got it? Good. Enjoy your weekend.
Yes, sir.
Say it again.
Yes, sir.
Who's the king?
Alan, you're the king.
Say it again.
Alan, you're the king. You're dominating me.
Say it again.
Alan, you're dominating me right now. Mode 1.
Mode 1.
Daddy, can I go, please? You're the king.
Say it again.
Oh, you're the fucking king. Yes.
You're the king, Alan.
AKA the king of verbal seduction. You know, it's the tone of your voice, how seductive your intonations are, the vibrations that you could just reach out over the phone lines and stroke a woman's breast just by the sound of your voice, how you could make her pussy so wet just by the sound of your voice. That's actually very hot.
So you said my show was what?
I said your show is powerful.
Oh, say it again.
Your show is powerful.
But the king would fuck me really good.
Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie. The king.
The king.
The king.
I have to agree with you on the communication piece, because I actually did take a session with Alan Roger Currie, and he gave me a line that I did not think was going to work, and it worked. And I was like, what the fuck?
Oh my God, man, he's the master. He's the master of the verbal seduction. He got that communication piece down pat.
It really worked. Yeah. It just simply worked, and I just didn't think it was going to work at all.
Some guys have natural handles. Some guys have a better natural shot, but you can always improve your shot. And sex is damn sure something you can fucking learn. Look, dude, you want to learn how to talk better? I'm hiring Alan Roger Currie to get my dirty talk game on, because it's always been something I want to get better at.
Verbal seduction, man. I'm like, clearly, this guy's the Michael Jordan of seduction. Like, you know, come on now.